Have you noticed that stuff you buy keeps getting more expensive? Like your morning coffee that used to cost $4 is suddenly $5? Or your rent keeps going up every year? That's not just bad luck, that's called inflation. But what actually is inflation? Why does it happen? And how does it affect you and me? Let's break it down in simple terms. Inflation basically means prices go up over time and your money doesn't stretch as far as it used to. In other words, what you could buy for $1 a few years ago now might cost $1.20. Imagine this. Last year you had $10 and you could buy a pizza. Now that same pizza costs $12. Your $10 didn't disappear, but it lost some of its power to buy things. That's inflation. When your money slowly loses value because prices keep rising. So, why does inflation happen in the first place? There are three main reasons, and I'll be super simple about them. First is demand pull inflation. That's when lots of people want to buy something, but there isn't enough of it. Think of a new iPhone or gaming console. Everyone rushes to buy one, but there's limited stock, so prices go up. Second is cost push inflation. That happens when it gets more expensive to move or make new products. For example, if oil prices go up, it costs more to transport goods, so companies have to raise prices to cover these costs. And third is money supply inflation. This happens when there's too much money floating around in the economy. If suddenly everyone had double the amount of money, everything would seem great at first, but soon prices would shoot up too. Because if everyone had more cash, businesses now know people can pay more so they can charge more. Now let's talk about how all of this affects you. When prices rise, your paycheck doesn't always rise with them, so your money doesn't go as far. Groceries, rent, bills all start eating up more of your income, and your savings, they slowly lose value too. If you had $100 sitting in a bank for 5 years, it would still be $100 after 5 years, but it wouldn't buy what it used to. That's why people invest, to try and grow their money faster than inflation eats it away. But here's something interesting. If you had debt, inflation can sometimes help you because over time, the money you owe becomes easier to pay back since the value of the money you owe changes. So, what do governments and central banks do about inflation? Their job is to keep things steady, not too high, not too low. A small amount of inflation, around 2 to 3% a year, is actually considered healthy. When inflation rises too fast, central banks raise interest rates. That makes borrowing money more expensive, so people spend less and things start to cool down. But if prices are falling and the economy slows, they can lower the interest rates. That makes borrowing cheaper and encourages people to spend more and invest more again. It's like balancing. Too much inflation hurts the economy, but too little can slow it down. There have been wild examples in history before of inflation. Take Zimbabwe, for example. Prices there once doubled every year. People needed bags full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. That's called hyperinflation. It's what happens when inflation completely spirals out of control. Most countries don't let it go that far. Governments and central banks constantly adjust interest rates and money supply to keep things steady and stable. So, to wrap it up, inflation is when prices rise and money loses value over time. It happens for a few reasons: more demand, higher production costs, or too much money in the system. A little inflation is normal, it's a sign that the economy is growing, but when it gets out of hand, it can make things much more tougher for everyone. The best thing you can do is to understand it because once you know how inflation works, you can make smarter choices with your money. So tell me, what's one thing you've noticed getting extremely expensive lately? Drop it in the comments. And thanks for watching, and if you learned something new, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. See you in the next one.